I'm Sharon Hutchison. I work for the Tippecanoe County Commissioners. I'm the grant facilitator for the county. And so I get to look at everybody's grants applications, but we also have a committee of community partners that will be reviewing your applications. And this is sort of a new process, and we'd like to have a workshop so we can get you all to understand what we're trying to do. The Tippecanoe Oak Grove settlement funds have been set up for this community to oversee. There's an unrestricted and a restricted part, and the state has told us the restricted part has to follow Exhibit E, which is linked everywhere on the application part and in that one form. Anyway, so we briefly wanted to go over what you needed to do, like I said. We'll do a real quick introduction and then go through things, and we'll start over with Carol Hall and Ott. And what is your role?
Oh,
This role.
my role on what? Oh,
This role today, this
So,
morning.
yeah, there's somebody coming in.
Okay. Hi,
Hello, how are you?
fine. Find a seat and sign in when you get settled in. Thank
Yeah, nobody told me.
Well, that's
No.
okay. It's not necessary.
It's a big deal. Yeah.
Oh, I'm another year older. Woo! I lived another year.
If you want handouts, they're over there too.
Awesome, thank you. Oh,
Okay.
shoot, I did not know.
Throw my
My
stuff.
fault. Sorry, I did not see that.
Okay, we're gonna do real quick introduction.
We have one more.
One more come. Charlie, you can sit right here on the end. That's right. And then sign in when you can. Let's see what kind of information I've got left over here. This first one I emailed to you guys if you registered, pre-registered. And then I've got other handouts for you.
That's in the email.
That's in
right?
the
Yep,
email,
okay.
correct. Okay, now Carol, now you can introduce yourself because I think everybody's here. Their tables are
She's
full.
logging in now.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so I am the chair of this committee this year, so it has resulted in us kind of thinking about the process and adding in some things we think will be helpful for you to direct what your programs look like. And design some metrics and allow us to report things back to the state that kind of show what we're able to do in this county that will help us with grant funding in the future, and then also thinking about sustainability. So if you haven't done SMART goals or looked for an evidence-based program or thought about theories of change yet, those are the kinds of things we're going to talk about today so that you, in a not overwhelming way. So I'm going to try not to deep dive, but to give a surface level, this is the way to start thinking about these things. And then throughout, we'll have some kind of practice things. So if you want to throw out the ideas that you have for the grant that you want to write, and you want kind of some feedback of what might work for that, what theory of change maybe to think about, or how to write SMART goals, any kind of practice you want to do in here for that is fine. And I'm happy to help. I will also say, and I'm offering this to everybody who is coming to these and who has asked me to see if I can take a look at what you're putting together. I'm happy to do that. So just send an email to the we're using the TROSCC email. And Sharon and Diff and I will be able to see that and we'll respond, hopefully in a timely manner, to what you're thinking. Okay. And if I don't respond and you're kind of thinking about this and you need a response, you feel free to bug me again. And I don't take offense to that. Okay.
And you are Dr. Carol Laud?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, for those who don't know me, I feel like I'm just all over this county. So my name's Carol Ott. I actually teach in the College of Pharmacy at Purdue. I'm a clinical professor of pharmacy practice, and I practice at Eskenazi Health in the gender health program. My primary focus is mental health down there in the gender health program, but I'm also co-funded to the health department. 10%, like 4 hours a week for some of the work we do here. And then I do various things with the state. And so that's me.
Very knowledgeable.
Finished the MPH last year, so it was a COVID thing, which I wanted to do, like I really wanted to do it, but 2020 was like, okay, now it's time. It's like now or never. So three years at IU. I went to IU. even though my other degrees are from Purdue and I teach at Purdue. So
We'll forget that.
that's okay. I have a adjunct position in the School of Medicine and Psychiatry, so I've always kind of been a house divided, so.
Okay, Chloe, just real quick.
Oh yeah, I'm Chloe. I'm pharmacy student on rotation with Dr. Ott this month.
Perfect. Tara, I'm his shadow from Phoenix. Okay.
Jason Badgett, Chief Strategy Officer, Phoenix Paramedic Solutions, and father of a PharmD from Purdue last year, who's now working out in San Diego.
Cool.
I am Keena Everett. I am the Executive Director for Community Corrections.
I'm Lieutenant Donald Miller with the Sheriff's Department here, and I actually am now the lieutenant of jail. I've been for about 3 years now.
My name's DeVilliers Stain. You can call me Diff. I work with Carol and Sharon, some of the administrative stuff. Joshua Allard, Grants Manager for LTHC Homeless Services. And I think I know your sister. She's my office mate.
I've heard a lot about.
I've heard a lot about you.
Charlie Short, Board President, Surf Center, grandson of Leroy Edwards Pharmacy in Purdue.
Nice.
Lindsay Krebs, Executive Director of Recovery Cafe Lafayette.
And Megan Wyckoff, I'm the Program Coordinator at Recovery Cafe Lafayette.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I didn't know that.
First week.
Okay, cool. Glad to see you with a new hat on.
Yeah.
So, real quick, this is what we're gonna go through. We had budgeted out time-wise, but I don't know that we're gonna stick to those times. So like I said, the first thing we want to talk about was right, you can change now. The purpose of the grant funding, which like I said before, it's Exhibit E. You will see Exhibit E links in the application and anything you go online. If you go to Next Level Recovery in the Indiana website, that's got a bunch of information. That also has there's an Excel spreadsheet in there that shows you how all of the counties are using their opioid settlement money. So you can see if there's a program that they're using that you might want to use or implement, whatever. I'm hoping that because this is a quick turnaround, that you guys know what you want to do today. We're hoping that you have that in your mind, what program you're wanting to go after, because yes, shake your head. Yes, Jason.
Where is this website at?
Next Level Recovery. It's on the indiana.gov. I didn't think about pulling that up, but it's got tons of information. They're the ones that are tracking the opioid settlement money. And they also have, the state requested that each county sets up a committee. And so they also list how their committee's set up and who's involved in their committee. Our committee has wrapped around, when we started this committee, just a real quick brief background, in 23 is I think when we started it. It was before Carol got to be the chair, that we invited people to the table. The commissioners said, let's get these people on this board. And so we have law enforcement, community corrections. We have a lot of agencies on the board. We have community people, Rhonda Stein and other community people that wanted to make sure the opioid settlement money got spent the right way. And so they were invited to be on this committee. I think there's 25 people that are on the committee. And then we have a breakdown of the grant review committee that will be reviewing your applications. There's only 5 people on that board this year. And then Carol took over as the chair in 24. And so, yeah, we're looking for new adventures. So we're going to start with Carol explaining the SMART goals and evidence-based programs.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So maybe I didn't read deep enough, and that's why Tara's with me, because I hate grants, but did we get a amount of funding that is going to be possible per agency?
No.
Okay, so figuring out scope of work without knowing that would have been difficult.
You can, sky is the limit. There's $1 million basically sitting in Tippecanoe County's bank account. And last year we were able to get a $550,000 grant from the state that matched our money. So we haven't spent down a lot of our money because we've used that match money. So we've still got $1 million to spend out. So I want you to create a program that's going to help our citizens the best, whatever it costs. And we will try the best way to fund it. The good thing about that is, I appreciate you asking that, Jason, is that After this grant closes, Drug Free Coalition opens back up. And so Drug Free Coalition is going to have funds to send you to, and they will have a much tighter budget, obviously. But if your program doesn't get completely funded by this, you might get some more programming funding from the Drug Free Coalition. Because their application is going to be pretty much the same. So the application part of it, you're going to be able to understand and know how to do all of this evidence-based and SMART goals and all that. But we will have a workshop for Drug Free Coalition as well too.
But coalition is every other year, correct?
Coalition is every year.
Okay.
This drug free, the opioid settlement, see, that's what's confusing. This one's an 18-month grant. And Drug Free Coalition is every year. And they're different cycles. So we can't be on the same calendar.
Even
Okay.
if you apply though, like you can apply every year, like if you
Yes.
applied and got, okay, that's, okay.
Right, and you can apply, if you received funding, this is the second round of the Tippecanoe opioid settlement. If you received that, and we did have a good question about that, if they received the first round, you can ask for the same amount of, or same funding for the same program, or if you have a new program that you want to see. But we would need to see the evidence that your first program worked. Does that make sense?
Or was moving in some kind of positive
Correct.
direction, like you're able to show some data that this program is worth sustaining.
Yeah.
One more scope of work question. All of this work has to be done within Tippecanoe County, or is it regional?
It is regional. That's why it's Tippecanoe Regional Opioid Settlement Funding, because we invited the donor counties to participate. We only had one person outside of the county participate, one town. And because they sent their restricted funds to us as well. So West Lafayette and Williamsport, Indiana, that's my hometown, sorry. You know, I sort of made them. It's not a big bucket, but it's, hey, I said, you're gonna be sending your people up here anyway. So why not spend the money up here as well too? So that's a very good question, Jason. So no, it doesn't have to be just Tippecanoe County. It can be our surrounding counties because that's why we're regional.
Excellent.
So how do we know we got it last year? Since I'm new in this position, I don't.
You would have been sending me reports.
Well, but I haven't been in
Right,
this
but no,
position, so I don't
community
know.
corrections did not apply last
Okay.
year. So we had, I think we had 13 apply and 11 were awarded. I think that was right.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and Lindsay you were on the review team too, were you?
Not the review team,
Okay.
because I submitted, but on the.
You were on
main
the
overall committee.
Yeah. Right. And we had people that were on the review team that had to submit an application, but they didn't review their application, if that makes sense. So if you feel compelled to help us review that, we don't want to turn you down. We want you to be able to learn more from the process. Anything else, Jason?
I'm sure I'll have more, but
That's good. I appreciate it. Okay,
You're gonna have to manage.
that's fine. Just have to think here.
Okay, so I think the first thing we want to talk about is the evidence base, because it's really important for us to try and understand, are we working or looking at programs that have an evidence base of success or moving in the direction of success? Or is somebody proposing a program that we already have evidence doesn't work? Because we want to make sure that we send our money in the right direction, and also that we can build metrics off of it. So we want to look at programs that have worked or policies that have worked in specific settings. So thinking about the setting that you're in, I'm going to give you some websites where you can go and look for programs. There are several good places where you can go and kind of see what's worked before. We don't expect that the program that you find, the evidence base that you find is absolutely perfect and a fit for your program. We expect there to be adjustments to what the program is. Everybody does that, and that's fine. It's just looking at the evidence base to say, we have this group of people in this kind of setting. This is what we want to do with them. These are the kinds of things we want to provide. These are the kind of metrics that we want to follow. And this is a program we see that has similar metrics or has worked in this way in the past. Okay, so that's why the evidence base is important. You may find programs that that are just getting started themselves or more new and innovative. It's perfectly fine to use those, even if there isn't some big solid evidence base that says this absolutely works, because we're building the evidence base all the time. It gives us higher quality information and ability to track metrics. So looking for those programs can also give you ideas of what metrics might be helpful for you to track. When we get into the SMART goals, the whole idea of this is reasonable things that are feasible to do in a time frame. And we'll think about how to write those short-term, midterm, and long-term goals. We find a greater likelihood of success. So if you know you're coming in with a program that has worked in a different setting before, For people, and maybe you're shifting it a little bit, you have more confidence that you are working on a program that is going to have some impact on the community. And then the credibility and confidence in what you're doing, as I mentioned, improving accountability and helping us better spend the grant money that we have, because we want to make sure with the funds that we have that we're going in the right direction. You want me to say ding or, oh, good, okay. So you have these slides and it's probably really small and I don't have my glasses on right now. I can read this. Hopefully you can see this. The links are all there. So these are, these top 4 are clearinghouses for evidence-based programs. It does require some navigation of the website. There are search bars in all of them where you can put in substance use, or you can put in incarceration setting, or you can put in whatever it is, and it'll bring you up the programs that fit with that.
Will you be sending us this slideshow? It's in.
There's a-
The hard copy's there, so if you want,
I just want to be able to.
you want to click on the link, we can do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first one I put up here is one, I think, I put it first because I think it's the one that really drills down what we're trying to do here, because this is opioid settlement money. This one comes from SAMHSA, so it's Evidence-Based Practices Resource Center, and it's actually one of the easiest to use websites. And it will pull up all kinds of evidence-based programs and policies that you can think about. Social programs that work kind of gets further out, does have substance use programs in it, but thinks about community resources and really thinks about how those network and work together in terms of what we offer to the entire community. So it could include housing resources, food insecurity resources, and different things like that that don't necessarily just specifically serve people with substance use disorder. So that's a really good place to look. The community guide is from the CDC. And this is where they kind of funnel their evidence-based programs into, ones that they've used, ones that they've evaluated around the country. And so that's a good one to look at. The What Works Clearinghouse is from the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education. So this is when you're getting into any educational resources you might want to use if you're working with youth and you want to get into education settings. With higher education, like working with Purdue or something like that. It can also give you information about how to provide education. So the best ways to provide education to folks maybe in the programs that you want to try. So it's not just in school settings, but it can be in settings where you want to think about whether you want to have flyers, whether they are at a reading level that's appropriate, whether you want to put them in different languages. I think we think about it, so my student Chloe and I here think about it from a health literacy perspective. So when we are seeing patients in our clinical settings, how are we providing education to our patients? How are they engaging with us? So that's a good place to look for those types of programs and ideas. One thing I will say about all of these is that you can mix and match programs, okay? You can think about maybe this program is getting out into the community. Maybe it's like a street outreach thing, or it's trying, to get out to people, meeting them where they are, but doesn't have a component of it that you're looking for. And maybe it's an education piece that you want to go into What Works and see what education component you could add to a program like a street outreach or something like that. So you can kind of mix and match ideas. One thing I will say when you do that is maintain what is feasible for you to do, because I think that's one of the most important things to think about when we're putting together grant projects is we want to have those specific aims and we don't want to have too many of them. So we will have a whole lot of ideas. It's kind of like in my research, when I think about writing a paper, my brain now goes to how many papers can I get out of this, as opposed to, promotions. I'm a full professor, so I don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. But you kind of think about the focus of the paper. So you can put too much information. You can have too many secondary aims, and it kind of clouds what the whole idea of the research or the paper is. So less is more when we think about impact, because it also gives us ideas for sustainability. So what can we add to a program moving forward? Say we've accomplished these 2 or 3 goals, or we're at least moving in the right direction. We have a solid foundation. And so what can we add to this because we've got this thing going? Okay, so it's perfectly fine, and we will look for things that are feasible and time bound that kind of fit with what an agency can do in a period of time. Then I put community toolbox here. So I didn't know anything about this until my MPH program. So I can't tell you how much my MPH taught me and changed how I think about how I practice. This comes from University of Kansas. And it can be an overwhelming website if you just take it at face value. But there's a lot of good information in this about community health programs. And how to put together health promotion programs, how to put together things that really kind of fit in this grant. So it's worth kind of playing around in the community toolbox if you really want to think more broadly about what your agency can do in the community and get some kind of tips. There is some information about projects and evidence-based programs in there, but I use this more as a reference to think about what is community health promotion and how can we use it, okay?
So before we go on to yours next one, I wanted to point out too, again, this is the same with the Drug Free Coalition one. If you've got 2 programs in mind, submit 2 applications. Do not submit 1 application for 3 different programs. Because you're going to confuse the committee and we need to keep your goals straight for each program of what you want to do. Yes, Jason.
So not all AIs can access that information, but Microsoft Copilot can scrub any of those if you tell it what you're looking for and give you direct links. You don't have to
Awesome.
go through by hand and figure that out. Microsoft Copilot can completely do that.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about be careful of your search words in those, make sure that you're getting everything you're looking for. Because one of the things about taking a dive into these with maybe a broad framework of saying, I'm looking at substance use disorder or housing or whatever it might be, is if you put those search, can you go back one?
Yep.
If you put like the keywords that you want into like the evidence-based resources, you might pull up programs or ideas that you hadn't thought about before. So I think that's a great idea. Just be careful when you're doing that you are searching in a way that helps you get broader ideas.
Sure.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about any of these websites?
I guess real quick, we haven't had a GED program there in the jail for a long time. Would the Works Clearinghouse, I think you said that's educational wise, right? That's not the reason why I'm here. I'm just kind of brainstorming. Would they potentially have
Sure.
resources for some? We need it. It's just COVID got us.
Sure.
And,
Yeah. I mean, What Works will definitely have ideas about that.
Mhm.
And I will say, when we think about, for me, and the opioid settlement committee, thinking about what programs we're looking at, I mean, we know that we need to broadly hit the social determinants of health, and education access is one of those. So you can make a case for having a program that targets education and improving somebody's educational levels such that they have more economic stability, that gets them to housing, to get them to, so what I want also to tell you to be careful about is to be so narrow in your focus that you're only thinking about, how am I going to get somebody into treatment? Okay, so treatment is important and you want to access resources where people can get to treatment. But the other things that go on with them that are barriers and maybe keep them from being successful in treatment or from feeling comfortable going to treatment, that can be any of those social determinants of health. And I'm saying that, and Sharon's, I'm hoping she's nodding. Okay. It's all in how you write it and what your goals are and what you're focused in on. Okay. Okay, so this is what the actual review team is going to get in terms of evaluating this section. Okay, so we're going to look at a description of the evidence, that it's clear in terms of your understanding of what the evidence base says and how you're going to apply it to the program. We know the evidence base, as I've said several times, doesn't always fit exactly what the program is that you're going to apply for, but can you give us a link? Can you show us why this evidence base is important to justify the program that you're gonna apply for? And then that detailed information. We don't need a novel, right? I mean, I medically write, and I've had to train myself to get over using big flowery language because journalists don't really want that anymore. So, but that detailed information, like this study shows, or this program shows how housing can be impacted by this specific intervention, and this is how we're going to use that intervention or that evidence base. Does that make sense? Okay. And then what were appropriate types of evidence used? So is it a program that really does fit? You can use, I don't know how many of you get into like the medical literature evidence base, but there are journal articles, there are publications that may not be program specific, but may say, we found this gap. Housing is a big gap. or food security is a big gap, or education is a big gap. So you can use a medical evidence base as well, if there are articles that kind of support why why we've identified this gap and why we're thinking.
A lot of those we can't access. I have to have Nicole pull those up and send them to me. So is there someone at Purdue that's willing to help us access those articles if we find one that we think might be
I can help you with that.
advantageous? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if you just get in, PubMed is, if you go to the National Library of Medicine, PubMed is a free to use. You may not be able to access the articles, but they will pull up the abstract.
Education.
I can access them. I'm in school right now.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, if there's one that you can't get, because I access to IU also in addition to Purdue. So if there's one you can't find, but you'll be able to see the abstract and you can kind of look at the abstract and see if it's got anything that you want to pull it for.
That's a great resource. Thank you.
So really quickly, when the review committee, because I understand what you mean when you don't want a novel, but when the review committee is looking at evidence, when it comes to submission, do you want it in the narrative or do you want like a number and it corresponds to a footnote? Or is that like, what's more important to you, knowing that we read something and we cited it? Or do you want us to put it in the narrative, which could take a while to explain depending on.
Oh, yeah, you can just
So
submit.
it is okay to do footnotes.
Yes.
Okay.
You have the opportunity to do a whole presentation too, which I think
Right.
makes everything way more well-rounded.
Yeah, you can really highlight in the evidence base or in the presentation, thanks Lindsay,
Yes.
which articles you use, but
Okay.
it's absolutely fine to put a footnote in and like a reference list.
Okay.
Or a superscript, I guess I
Sure.
should say, yeah. Is it applicable to the project? And as I said, most things won't be perfect to your project in terms of the evidence base that you find. But you can cite and say, again, this is this gap that we found, this is what this article said. I mean, we may ask a question about, okay, this population of people, the population of people that you are hoping to focus on in your project wasn't represented in the evidence base that you found. So it would be a good idea to just say something like, this population wasn't represented, but this is the reason why we think this would be helpful. Okay, so just kind of thinking about those things. And again, I don't expect, I've been doing this for a long time. So what comes into my head when I think about this is very different than sometimes folks who work out in agencies that don't have a lot of experience really trolling the evidence base like I do and pulling out the parts and pieces. So we're not looking for people who have a lot of research experience or a lot of grant writing experience. We want to get this money out into the community to the people who need it. And you folks are the ones who know better than anybody what is going on out in the community. So we need kind of what your focus is, what you're thinking about, why you think this evidence supports the project. We're not expecting it to be written in some PhD level language. Okay. Because I know this can be kind of like, oh my God. All right. Are the findings consistent? So if you have a couple of articles or a couple of projects that you're looking at and they have different findings in terms of what the success of the program was or what the evidence base says, have you justified that? Like, why are we thinking about this if we're finding that this program worked here but didn't work here? Just kind of consistency. So what we really want to do with the evidence base is just support what we're doing. As I said, it doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be something where we're not looking at a program that says this just never worked. Okay. So as I said, we're not looking for absolute justification, but just some ideas. Why are we thinking like this? And what can we find to support it? And then, is it peer reviewed? So all of those websites are peer reviewed. They're looked at by the CDC and SAMHSA and Department of Education. And so if they're putting something into one of those websites that says this program is promising or this program has a good evidence base, they do that for a reason, and they have a lot of people vetting those programs to go in there. So on any of those websites, it's going to be a peer reviewed thing. Hopefully, and I say this with a grain of salt because I follow a website that talks about papers that have been retracted. Not the COVID one, lately. Is it peer reviewed? So if you're finding it in PubMed, it's gonna be peer reviewed. Okay, so if you're looking for an medical evidence base, it's gonna be peer reviewed. We're not gonna take a dive into saying, oh my God, this journal has this tier or whatever. We're not doing that kind of stuff. But is it a newspaper article? Because sometimes newspaper articles talk about a program. But is it unbiased and balanced? You know, the things that we're saying, maybe you found something some other community did in Indiana that was really successful and helpful. We would look, that would be fine to cite and say, this community did this, and this is what the success was reported on in the media. We looked a little bit deeper at this program or something like it, and this is what we found to support that. Okay, so we just want to make sure that it is supported by a community of practice. Okay, any questions about the evidence base?
How would someone who's not used to doing that know whether or not an article is peer reviewed? If it's something that's outside of what you just, of the resources that you gave.
Sharon, go ahead.
It says on there that it's peer reviewed.
It'll say on there, but as I said, if you're getting into PubMed and you're finding journal articles and stuff like that, those are peer reviewed.
But newspaper articles are not peer reviewed.
They're not peer reviewed, but no, but you can cite, say this newspaper in this county talked about this program. We went to PubMed and found this to support it, or we went into one of these links to support it.
Yeah, it reminds me of Purdue Pharma's little quote on opioids being non-addictive, that they sold all the Oxycontin under for years.
Yeah, well, that's a whole big story. That's how that was a letter to the editor.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, the medical community didn't do enough vetting themselves at that. I wouldn't get too far into the weeds in terms of peer reviewed, because we're not going to go searching for that. We're just going to look at the evidence and say, does this make sense? Does this fit this program? And can we verify where it came from? But we're not going to take a dive into like the articles themselves and read them. We don't have time. Okay. Everybody familiar with writing SMART goals? Everybody love to write SMART goals?
Yes.
So we're going to try and break it down so that it's not so overwhelming. I mean, we make, and Chloe can attest to the fact that every year we make them do an annual kind of self-evaluation, and every single section has to have SMART goals.
Wow.
And, well, yes, but then I get to review 8 of them and it takes me 4 freaking ever. Because their SMART goals usually start out terrible. And that's that we spend most of the P1 year sessions talking about SMART goals. So when we think about this, we don't want flowery language. This is really straightforward. This is a plug and chug formula. Okay. So specific, who or what. So you want to have a population of people that is your focus. Okay. And thinking about who those people are, you can take this SMART, you can take the slide and fill it out. So say we're going to look at people in work release or home detention, or people in the jail, or people that come to the Recovery Cafe. So we're going to look at those folks, and you can broadly say that population, or you can say people who come to the Recovery Cafe in recovery from methamphetamine use disorder. So you can drill it down. You can be more specific about the population. What I would say is don't set yourself up to have not enough people to focus on. Okay, so we want to be able to impact the community broadly. And so don't set yourself up to be too specific, because then you can write sub-metrics that say, okay, if we're looking at people with substance use disorder, in recovery from substance use disorder, we can have that broad focus. We're going to have a sub-focus that says, we're going to also gather metrics about people who have methamphetamine use disorder. Okay, so we can drill it down into sub-metrics once we get through the SMART goals. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, measurable, by how much? Pie in the sky is great. We would like to reduce our opioid overdose deaths by 100%. Okay, we would, but what is measurable and what's reasonable in that? So it can be reasonable to say we want to reduce it by 10% in a year. Okay, so pick something that you can do, because you don't want to get into the first quarter, the second quarter, at the end of the year in your short-term SMART goal and say, okay, we haven't moved the needle, but maybe you have. Maybe there's a 5% decrease. But if you set yourself up and say 50, then you're going to look at that and go, oh God, we didn't do anything, right? So everything's baby steps, right? We take steps forward, and then we have things happen, and we take a step back, and then we have steps forward. So it's any positive motion, right? Any step forward.
I switched to that one. I didn't know if you wanted to see that one.
No, I'm gonna go back.
Okay.
Okay, but that's okay, thank you. I told her this morning when I walked in, she's like, said something about practice. I said, I literally wing everything. Okay. So achievable, and I put reality check here. Again, we're talking about not just our measurable in terms of what we want to do percentage wise or number of people wise, but is it achievable in a time frame? So the time frame being short-term goals are probably a year, 18, our life of this grant's 18 months, is that right? Okay. So you can write a short-term goal that is the life of the grant, and then you can write a midterm goal that is maybe longer. So then, and I would encourage you to think about that, because as we have the question about can we apply for the same program, that's where you get into those midterm goals. So you're showing that sustainability. So serious reality check. And we may come back to you and say, tell me why you think this is achievable in this period of time. And we may, not to temper enthusiasm at all, but to say, let's start here. Okay, because any positive step. Realistic and relevant. So relevance, is it, whatever you're writing, whatever your goal is it relevant to the program itself? So this is what we've sometimes find is we can gather metrics about anything. I mean, we could go outside and count rocks in the parking lot, right? But does that go toward the project that you're working on? Okay. And we don't need SMART goals about every single aspect of the project. We're going to ask you to pull out the major ones and kind of think about that. But as how you write the SMART goal, is it going to tell us about the program itself and the activities of the program and how well it's working? Okay. And then time bound. So this is important too. I wouldn't write something that says in the first quarter, because really, that gets into, is the grant money, is it available yet? Has it been released? Have we been able to spend it? Have we gotten the people in place that we need to do these things? So you could write a SMART goal that says, by the end of the second quarter, we will have this person in place to do this thing. Okay, that can be a SMART goal. Because we think about capital expenses, we think about what is the foundation, who's going to do this? I think sometimes when we think about SMART goals, we think about just the population of people that we want to impact, that we want to positively affect. And we forget about, we think that the grantors don't want to know about who's going to do this stuff. Because if there's nobody there to do it, then those things aren't going to happen. Okay, so it's perfectly acceptable to say we are looking at this money because we want to have a coordinator who's going to work with this agency to access or be the focus for other resources, to be that point person within our resource to get people out into other resources. It's okay to write a goal around that person and getting them up and running. Okay, so short-term, medium-term, long-term. These really look at the short term would probably be the life of the grant. So what do you really want to get done within the life of the grant? And what is your expectation for that and for the program? And you can write a couple of SMART goals around very specifically that. The more metrics we have without being overwhelming, the better able we are to send reports back to the state, but then also for us to think about telling our community about all the things that we're doing. Because I think that's the other thing we don't do a good job of, is telling the broader community of Tippecanoe County and the region all the things that we're doing here. Okay, so that's what the other thing about these goals is, we'll be able to do that.
We're ready, turn. Okay, I'll go back.
Now, medium term.
We've got 2 more terms.
We need to have a hand signal. Medium term could be, what is the next grant cycle? So you could say within 3 years, we want to do this. And longer term would be like, if this grant went on forever. So it could be in 7 years or 10 years. So this is long range thinking about sustainability. Okay. We don't need a whole bunch of those, but it would be nice to see a medium term and a long term, just to say this program is going to go on beyond the time frame of this particular grant cycle. And knowing we have Drug Free Coalition, we're hoping the Health First Indiana and the opioid settlement money that we're going to continue to get grant funding where we can sustain these programs. Dig. Okay. I put this in here because I really want, you're going to have to go back and read the slide a few times when you go back and you're thinking about your project, because this is really important. Okay. So reasonable to allow you to achieve meaningful progress. And meaningful, you will know that. I mean, that's really kind of what your agency, what is meaningful? What has been your experience in the community? For whatever your project is, what it can target, who it can target. If it's a certain number of people coming to a group, what do you already have? And so this is a really important thing to know. To have those numbers at the beginning. So who are we already impacting? How many people? In what way? So you have that baseline number to know what your change over time is going to look like. And then, thinking about how many people are you serving? How many people are achieving recovery? Maybe that's what you need to know. How many people are housed, if that's what your agency does? How many people are coming in with food insecurity? How many people are getting a GED? So how many people do you have doing these things right now? And it's okay to say, like you mentioned, we don't have the GED program anymore. How many? So right now, none. So any forward motion would be your expectation, but your baseline number is, we're not doing this right.
585 inmates today.
Yeah.
So I know that's what you're saying, right?
So
Like, general population that we're serving on a daily basis, just take that into account, to where, I'm not saying
No.
everybody, some of them have high school and GED already, but, so you're saying go through that and try and routinely figure out how many people don't have that already? Or?
Yeah, I mean, so right now you don't have a program at all. So,
Right.
so the people you would impact, if you wanted to put a GED program in place and say you're going to focus on people, you're focused on everybody, but you're going to metric wise look at people with substance use disorder, or a history of coming in. Your number right now is we're not providing this to anybody, but our potential is this number of people.
And the GED program is something that literally just popped in my mind while we're talking. That is not why I'm here. I was just thinking.
I think it's a good example, though, to think
Yeah.
about more broadly how we think about
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
5 pillars of the social determinants of
Absolutely.
health, because those are the things that are the barriers that impact recidivism rates, that, when people don't have the resources or the skills coming out, to be able to impact the recidivism rate. That is not a bad idea, honestly. So now it's stuck in my head. So then we do percentage or a number in a time frame. So you can do a percentage of people, we're going to decrease the opioid overdose fatality rate by 20% in 2 years. Of course, we want to do better because it's 24% for us last year. Okay. So you can do a percentage, or you can say we have a program where we have groups. We are going to increase the number of people attending groups by 100 in this time frame. So it can be a number or it can be a percentage. Okay. So think about that. And you can use that for your SMART goals. Okay. Ding. Okay. So these are some SMART goal examples, some things that I wrote over time. And Keena might recognize some of these things because I did my MPH internship at Corrections in 2022, and these massive program plan, which I can send you if you want me to. It's a 60-page program.
Fun reading. Fun.
It has some historical data in it. It might actually be useful for you because it was written in 2022, so it's a couple years old, but it will give you, I'll send it to you. So what we're looking at is who will do what, resulting in whatever measure it is by when. So these are the plug and check things. Okay. So increase substance use disorder screening for primary care patients by 75% in 2 years. Okay. That's a SMART goal. It requires me to know how many people are being screened right now in a primary care setting, and what providers are doing it, and who I need to really focus in on to do some training. But that's a SMART goal. And as long as I know my baseline number, that's a metric. Increased hepatitis C screenings done by the health department for work release participants by 30% within 1 year. Okay. So when you look at these, these make sense, right? But when you sit down, you think about your program, the idea of, okay, what are my metrics? And it's something really simple. Like, I'm going to go back to the GED. We're going to increase by 30% the number of people obtaining a GED in the jail in the first year. Now you have 0. So now we're going to increase it by 30%. Okay. So reduce preventable hospitalizations by 5% by the end of year 2. It could be something as simple as this. And this is from another project I did. I had to randomly do a project for Logan County, West Virginia.
Oh.
online. Like I had to gather all the data about Logan County, and they literally have no telehealth. They're in the middle of the mountains with no telehealth. So that was our whole goal with my group, was to increase telehealth, which meant we had a whole lot of other SMART goals. But preventable hospitalizations was our primary focus. So you can take your primary focus and write a SMART goal about it. By the end of Q2, increase referrals to SUD treatment by 25%. So you see where I'm going here with this: measurable, reasonable, feasible, all the things that kind of fit with your program, but that kind of any positive forward step. Because programs take time. Then the other thing that we need to think about is if you get grant funding for a program or you're trying to sustain a program, do any of the SMART goals need to be revised? Because nobody knows exactly what's going to happen when we write these SMART goals. So 6 months down the road, you may look at your data and go, oh yeah, no. So we need to revise the SMART goal, get back with the grant committee and say, I'm revising the SMART goal in this metric because this isn't being measured appropriately. So it's absolutely fine to revise SMART goals to better reflect the program, especially if it's something new that you're trying to do that you don't really know exactly how it's going to work out. Any questions about SMART goals? Anybody want to think about their program and throw out SMART goals that you're kind of considering right now?
Well, I do have a question about, in the RFP, question 15, it says for each outcome listed in question 13, provide a SMART goal. If we have 8, do you want SMART goals for every single 8, or do you want us to condense the overview and do a SMART goal for the program itself? But every single outcome, that's a lot of reading.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things I would say about that is to go back and look at your outcomes
Sure.
and say, do we need 8 outcomes?
Well, but if you want it to be complete and thorough.
Well, I know, but I mean, complete and thorough, but what is a program meant to do?
Sure.
Okay, so ultimately meant to do, I mean, because it's going to impact other outcomes, right? And we know that. So those are maybe longer term goals out into the future. When you're looking at what your program is right now, pick those maybe 3 or 4 things.
Okay.
For the outcomes that you really want to do with this program. The pie in the sky, we don't know what's going to happen. Those, you could write those as midterm or long-term goals. Like, we're hoping that this program here is going to impact these 3 or 4 things because we're reasonable and we know we can't do everything all at once. And then, so we have these short-term goals. So you have maybe 4 of those. And then you can have midterm or long-term goals that are the pie in the sky. Like, we're hoping this program is going to do these things. Like what I wrote for community corrections, I had a decreased recidivism rate by 30% within 7 years. Okay, so that was my long-term, like way out here output. Okay, so I would encourage you to look back at the outcomes that you have now and think about which handful of them really go to the program.
Okay.
And then write the SMART goals around those. Yeah, and then maybe midterm or longer term around those other things you hope it will do, which would be a grant for the next time. Good question. Lindsay, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just gonna run one by you.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of my brain working right. So something like, members experiencing OUD, will increase, MAT support by 10% over the course of 12 months.
Yeah, I would reverse the language and say increase. Matt, what was your number? Say it again.
10%. I know, that's actually, I have a question. I want to say the 10% earlier, but can I do that in a SMART goal, or does it have to be in line?
The way that we read these, so you want the impact is here. So
Okay.
usually, so you have the what you want to do for who by when.
Okay. You'll have to keep it in order. My brain was
Yeah.
struggling to make that sound clear.
I mean, you can't, sometimes people write SMART goals that say by year 2, we will decrease or increase MAT use by members by whatever percent.
Yeah. Okay.
That makes sense.
Makes sense.
I don't know that it has to be in the exact same order. It's just, like you said, what your brain, how it rolls off and how the committee's going to be able to review it correctly.
I do better, so for my brain, I do better with the plug and chug
Yeah,
Yeah.
and not putting too much information in there.
that's the key.
Yeah, because,
The one SMART goals this long. We want
yeah,
them short
I
and
mean,
sweet.
if I had a different population here, like the primary care one, increased substance use disorder screening for primary care patients with depression, by 75% within 2 years. So you can put in things like that, but you can get too deep in the weeds in terms of, you know, we don't really want to know who the treatment provider is going to be. We don't want to know like what kind of mat or anything like that. Does that make sense? Anybody else have any SMART goals or any practice you want to do with these? Okay, like I said, you can send me a message if you're thinking about SMART goals for your program or for your grant application, and I can take a look at them. Okay. So these are the questions that we're gonna ask the review team to answer about your applications. So is a SMART goal created for each problem statement or goal? Okay, so that's where we get into the outcomes that you listed. And like I said, and I can't reiterate this enough, I would really encourage you to be realistic. Not that we don't want to do all these things, but don't set yourself up to have to write a bunch of SMART goals or maybe outcomes that you won't even be able to track at the beginning, right? And I do encourage you, if one of your outcomes is to hire somebody or to pay rent for space or to do those things, if you're going to ask for capital, it needs to be a goal. Okay. And so you want a metric around that.
How much sustainability information do you want around that? So if we're gonna hire somebody, do we need to show how we're gonna keep them employed when this is done?
I think you can throw in some ideas, but we recognize that sometimes the sustainability comes from getting somebody in place and saying, we're going to use this funding to do this person, and this is who we're going to access for future funding for sustainability. And have some ideas. So.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm looking at other people. Because I'm saying all this stuff and then thinking, but there are other people here who could answer this question. Describe how the program will be evaluated to assess impact and monitor progress. So you write the SMART goals and you say, okay, within 6 months or within the second quarter, or within the first year, how often are you going to check that metric? So we require reports. How often? Monthly reports. So that's kind of built in for you to say, we're going to go back and check this metric. So whatever it is. So if it was like the primary care, like the substitute source screening in primary care, I'm going to go back and look at, for us in Epic at Eskenazi, we can pull reports on anything. So I would go back and pull a report for this particular primary care clinic and these providers. And I would ask Epic to look for the SUD screening metric we decided to use. Okay, so that would give me my number. So we're going to ask for monthly reports. So we just want information back on each of the goals. Again, why you don't want 8. Okay. I mean, this just might, maybe you do. I mean, maybe you're like, you know, that's your jam, not, you know.
Will there be a standardized grant reporting form or we expect, okay.
Yes.
And to speak to what you mentioned earlier, that if something changes with our SMART goals, that would be the time to also let you know.
Yes.
In those monthly reports.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
we realized that it was real cute to begin with, but now it's changed. So now we're telling you that this is where we're at.
Yeah, so maybe your population is changing at LTHC. Maybe it's, you know, maybe you've identified a subset of people that is being impacted more by the grant funding. And so you want to monitor, that's a subset. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we love that. I love that.
Okay.
I mean, because that means you're evaluating your program, and that's what evaluation is, because none of us know exactly what's going to happen with anything. And if you're just plugging and chugging numbers saying, I'm going to just look at these people and I'm only going to look at that SMART goal and not look at, it's kind of like the forest for the trees business. Maybe I have numbers here that says this is happening, but it's not telling me more about the people that it's impacting. So you can yes, that's evaluation. Okay. So assessing impact and monitoring progress is why we do this evaluation. Monthly reports, the state requires monthly reports. I wouldn't expect you to have, it may be like the first quarter before you go, oh, I need to change this. So you go back to that monthly report and you say, over the last quarter, we have identified, because it may not be things that rear their ugly heads during a month, right? So at 3 months or 6 months, you've identified that there's something, you need to tweak something. It's perfectly fine to say it took us this period of time to identify that this SMART goal wasn't telling us exactly what we needed it to know. All of this stuff is so important because that's how we build this evidence base. And my goal with this too is to take the community of the grants that the projects that we're working on, and publish this stuff, because how do you think all this stuff gets to the evidence base, right? So it's important that we think about not just phoning it in terms of the SMART goals and the metrics, because we really want to show the impact that this money is having on the community. Huh?
How do we allow for seasonality?
You can write a SMART goal around that says, you write your SMART goal, but then in your reports, you can come back and say, this is the time of year when we have fewer people coming for this reason. And then you're looking at, so I would write it percentages as opposed to numbers. Because then you can say, we have fewer people coming in, but this percentage of people this is still happening. So we can see some progress.
Okay, and the follow-up is if we have a program which is organized around summer,
Mhm.
it's a similar deal. We just say 0 participants this month because it's December.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, what I would put in the monthly report though is what are you doing to ramp up for the next summer? So is there something going on? So if it's a summer funding thing and you have those programs, what is going on in the off months that are going toward, are you doing any improvements to the program? Did the metrics that you got about the program tell you anything about what needed to change? Because something always does, right? There's something that needs to shift around. Do you have anything to add?
No, you're doing great.
Okay. Outcomes that will be measured. So identify measurement tools or methodology for collecting data. So you have a SMART goal and you have your outcomes, you have your SMART goals. How are you going to gather that data? So what are you going to look at to find that information? So for me, I mentioned I would go run a report in Epic, which is super easy for me. And so that's, I would put in there, we'll monitor electronic health record, we'll pull reports from electronic health record to evaluate this SMART goal. Maybe you have pen and paper and you have logbooks, or you have, however it is that you're keeping track. So Lindsay, you mentioned increased people getting mat therapy. How are you going to know that? So that's what you put in there. So we will get this information from this place. Okay. And that can even shift too. So you can find out, wow, this wasn't really what it needed to be. Or maybe you institute a new system. Maybe you have something electronic where originally it was paper and pencil that you're going back and looking through logbooks or reports, but then you institute something that's electronic. You would just on a monthly report say, we instituted this, we realized this about this metric and needed more information about a better way to gather this. Okay. And then outcomes for each goal are clearly stated and aligned to the described needs. So whatever your program is, the outcomes, everything needs to flow. The outcomes, SMART goals, how you're going to get that information, what you're going to put in your reports. So it just needs to flow. Again, as I said, don't put outcomes in there that don't fit what you're asking for. It may be information that you're gathering, and that's great. And maybe keep gathering it, because at some point down the road, you're going to need that foundational number that's going to tell you how you're going to improve it in a subsequent grant application. It just doesn't need to be in here. Okay, don't make more work for yourself. I do that all the time, make more work for myself, but I'm learning how to shave off the things I don't need to do. Okay, so I want to get into theories of change. How does everybody feel about theories of change? Are you familiar with them, or have you heard of it before?
How does that relate to stages of change?
Theory of
Something
change.
different?
Stages of change is the trans-theoretical model.
And the other day I was like, oh my gosh. But then as soon as I looked into it, it was like, oh,
Just big words.
yeah.
So this is a part that we added to this and the evidence base and writing the SMART goal. So we know that this is something that is people need to wrap their minds around. Okay, we are not looking for everybody to be experts in theories of change. Okay, we want you to throw out, this is what we think the theory of change might be. And the important part about this is when you look at the evidence base in those links, they all go back to theories of change, because this is how our evidence base grows, or we could say this is what people do. This is how human behavior works, okay, at various levels, the socio-ecological model, okay? So we go from intrapersonal, so me as an individual, what is it that drives me to change a behavior? At the interpersonal level, we're looking at who do I connect with? Who is my support system? Why does that matter to me? And what kind of influence do they have over me in my behavior, okay? Organizational, so are you looking at a program where you want to change the structure of what your organization looks like? Or how you impact people? Is it something where you've identified, we have individuals that come in and use our resource, but we aren't successful in this way because of something going on up here. So we're looking at some systemic issue in the organization that is causing challenges to implementing a program. Okay, so then you're looking at organizational cultural change. So do we want to do something that changes how the organization thinks about people or disease states or accessing care or whatever it might be? And I don't think we've gotten, I mean, I think this is really higher level thinking, but I think what's important to consider about this is we know we have structural barriers, right? We have systemic barriers to people accessing these programs that we want to put in place for all of our best efforts, whether it's racism or some other systemic issue that says the people that work here, I need to really work on how they view this thing. Okay, so that I can help people understand why medications are so helpful, why the evidence base has changed to say, we need this first, because we know that psychotherapy and resources like the Recovery Cafe and getting involved in all of the social context of recovery is important. It's a very important piece of sustainability in recovery. Medications get them there, right? But sometimes we have a culture that says medications are a crutch, right? So how do we work on thinking about what the evidence base tells us, how the medical evidence base has shifted over time to say, now we have treatment guidelines from the American Society of Addiction Medicine that say meds first, everything else comes later. Okay, so maybe we have this broader organizational issue where we need to do some training. We need to think about how we talk to people about how this has changed over time. So this is where the organizational cultural theory comes in. Who do people believe and why do they believe them? Because then that goes into training and who comes in and does that training. Whether, is it a peer? Is it somebody who is a person in recovery who was successful using medications? Is it somebody like me who is a practice expert in these kinds of things, which sometimes people don't want to hear from because I just know whatever I think about myself or people think I think about myself, right? So thinking about that culture of how is this change going to happen? And who's the best person to do that? So that's the organizational change. Community, I love community-based thinking. So one of my favorites, diffusion of innovation. So I use that in almost all of my program for my MPH because it was like, I'm going to go through each of these, but diffusion of innovation is who are early adopters? How does that information get out? How do we get people to think about that kind of change? And then the community organization theory is really around where's the hub? Like what organization is the best, what resource is the best one to be up here as an umbrella and brings it down to everybody else? Okay, ding. Okay, so I think one of the things you need to think about when why theory of change gets so daunting sometimes is what is your program meant to do? So you're trying to affect individual people. Are you trying to think about their relationships to each other? Are you trying to think about your agency or organization as a whole? Or are you trying to think about the community? And so if you're thinking about, when you think about who your focus is for this program, once you decide that, then you go here. Okay, so that first table was, I am going to impact individual people in terms of getting into recovery. That is intrapersonal. So you can get rid of a whole bunch of weeds by just knowing who your population of people are that you want to impact. Okay, does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
It's making me rethink what I initially put for that part of the grant. So that's helpful. Like I went to my obvious answer for what our program offered. When you say that, it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, what is my true objective here? Like I did the easy answer based on not knowing any better.
Yeah, I mean, stages of change people know all about, especially in the substance use disorder community. We've been using it for nicotine use disorder for a long time, like the behavioral stages of change and pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, all of maintenance, all that kind of thing. But for you, it might be interpersonal. It might be that social context. Or it might be diffusion of innovation when you think about a community to say, who are my champions that are going to bring this out there?
So-
Just kind of how, I mean, you can take one program and think about it in a lot of different ways. So like Sharon said, write 2 grants if you got 2 projects. Okay, and how that's going to work. Okay, so did I answer your question? Does that?
Yeah, big
Okay.
time. Thank you.
Okay, so individual, intrapersonal. So stages of change, trans-theoretical model, what I just talked about, this is where this lives. You're looking at that individual person. You're going to have one-on-one interactions with them. You're going to evaluate where they are in terms of their stage of change. The health belief model is one that I don't think we think about enough because, like you said, Lindsay, most people go to the trans-theoretical model. I mean, it's just what's out there. It's been well validated in substance use disorder populations. And we know how to navigate it, right? So it kind of makes it easy to think about how we put people in different places in terms of the stages of change. The health belief model goes to, does this matter to this person? And trans-theoretical model doesn't really bring out, it evaluates, like this says, understanding readiness to change, and that it's a process, right? And that people can move all along kind of around this process to various places in the trans-theoretical model. The health belief model goes deeper and says, does this person perceive this to be a threat to themselves? And I don't mean like a violence threat, I mean like a threat to life, like, or health. Where stages of change says what matters to us from a motivational interviewing perspective, what matters to a person, what might they think about, so that it helps them shift along the stages of change. And the health belief model, it helps us to identify, do they perceive there's an issue? And do they think the recommended plan of action is going to matter? Okay, so that's where the health belief model comes in. It's a little bit different, right? And sometimes programs really, when they think about which one of the intrapersonal theories of change to use, it's like, maybe the health belief model is better. Maybe the health belief model is better in terms of what motivates somebody underneath it all. Do they even perceive it to be an issue? Because that's a deeper thing than doing motivational interviewing. Or do they have traumatic experiences, or do they have something that is a barrier to them actually even perceiving it to be important? The theory of planned behavior is another one that I really like. This is a deeper dive into somebody's intrapersonal beliefs. It's a relationship between their beliefs, attitudes, intentions, and behavior, and their perceived control over that behavior. That's the piece that the theory of planned behavior brings in, is do they have their own agency? Do they have their own control over what that behavior is that they want to achieve? So what are who is influencing them? And that's what the theory of planned behavior brings in. Okay. Any questions about any of these?
Give grad school credit for this.
Yeah. No.
Since that PH It's actually going to grad school.
So, I mean, I know, and I'm really trying to make this make sense.
I know.
Does it make sense? I mean,
It
okay.
does for me, because I've
Okay.
been through it.
I have a question. So do you so you're looking at your population and then you're like, which of these best fits?
Mhm.
That's kind of the goal.
Yeah, so you think about your population, and are we doing this in a group setting? Are we doing this in individual setting? So you kind of pick out who that population is, what your primary goal of that program is, which should be your first outcome and your first SMART goal. And then you say, okay, is it the individual person? Is that really what I'm going to dig into? Or is it their social relationships, which gets into interpersonal, which is next? So that's where you look at kind of your groups of theories of change.
So you kind of look like, first is it individual, organizational, community, and then once you decide that, then you go.
Then you go to the theory. Yeah, and I would throw in, because I think for most of you, it's going to be this interpersonal. So we'll get into a couple of those theories. And if I were you, I would just take these theories I've listed out here. We did provide theory at a glance if you want to look deeper into the theories, but you can take a rabbit hole into the theories at a glance, because there's a whole bunch of other ones, some other ones that I really like that are way beyond this. And probably for programs that go on are sustainable, you get into some of these other theories. But I would take from these would be my recommendation, whatever the group is that you choose. I've lined out the ones I think are most useful for these types of grants. Does that answer your question? Okay. Ding. Okay, so this is interpersonal. These are the two that I think really might help you consider what your program is doing if it is those interpersonal connections. So assistance through social relationships. So the social support theory kind of gets in, we think about recovery capital, we think about social capital. This is who's providing emotional support, who's providing actual aid and support, who's giving them information or suggestions or advice. Who gives them constructive feedback? Who did they listen to in terms of their own self-appraisals? Like when they appraise themselves, who are they looking for that constructiveness, that affirmation, or that social comparison? I thought I spelled that wrong for a second. I'm worse than Loomis in terms of misspelling. I go straight to them. So this one is really good if you're thinking about, maybe you're thinking, Lindsay, about your circles and who is influencing them there. When you think about capital funding, does the social support theory, we've got to have the building, right? So if you're going to look at your circles in terms of metrics, maybe you're looking at social support theory. Because you're looking at those interpersonal relationships, because that's what brings people back, right? Is the interpersonal relationships. And I'm assuming, so I don't want to do that, but brings them back into that setting and feeling comfortable and safe and able to walk on this journey of recovery alongside people who are doing the same thing. Okay, so this is who gives them this. And who, you could look at a person, you could do comparisons about, and I'm using Lindsay as an example because I know a lot about
Can you
recovery.
change that to, instead of who gives them this, can it be a what gives them this?
Yeah. This actual aid and support can be the what, like the agency that gives them that. Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I mean, and it might be you want to survey people. Maybe part of your project is surveying people. And there are validated surveys to use, but then what I always do is I take a validated survey and then I say adapted from, I tweak it all over the place.
Yeah.
For the specific population. So if you want to get from your folks, what is bringing them back? You got to get the pro and the con, right? So what is going on in maybe the circle or this group of people? Okay, and we know people do this. The social comparison. It's human nature to look at the person next to us and say, I mean, it's not necessarily totally keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, but why do they have this and I don't? Or how did they get this and how can I? You know what I mean? So how do they make that social comparison? And does it change their behavior in a positive way or a negative way? So you have to monitor all that stuff. I mean, I just had orientation with the P1 pharmacy students just coming in, and it's very overwhelming to walk into pharmacy school and have faculty and all these people all over the place. But one of the things I told every table that I sat at is you will be tempted and you will do this to compare yourself to everybody else. To this student wants to do this. This student wants to do this. This student says they know what they want to do. Literally, they don't, and it never ends up that way. So I have these circles of students where I go, please don't do that. They'll do it anyway, but please don't do that. The social comparison can really drag people down. So it's good. We need to know the negative in the social comparison as much as we need to know the positive, because sometimes negating the negative, so trying to work on that barrier, helps us with the positive. Okay. So social support theory is a good one to kind of think about. Social cognitive theory is kind of this idea of reciprocal determinism. So in short, there's a person and that's their environment, and those things interact to make people move along a journey, right? So is the environment getting in the way of them being able to improve their health or to get into treatment or use medications, whatever it might be that you're looking at? The social cognitive theory takes those personal factors about the person themselves, blends in some of those social determinants of health, like what is going on with that individual. Are they housed? Are they food secure? Those kinds of things, and adds in the environment where they are. So that reciprocal determinism, does the environment support their personal growth or their personal change? Are they willing to change that environment? Do they have the means to do that? Okay, so that's social cognitive. What is their capacity? So this kind of goes toward talking about, I'm back to the GED, sorry. The skills and knowledge. So do they have the capacity, capacity to make that behavioral change? Are we expecting them to do something they don't have the capacity to do? So maybe they don't have the educational level. Maybe they don't have that reading level. Maybe they don't have like the skills to even navigate some of these systems, because we know how hard just navigating, I know from the healthcare perspective, but navigating the community perspective to even get to where they need to be. And do they know where the resources are? We have so many things in this community going on, so many agencies doing so many things, and we don't have a clearinghouse for all of those things. I mean, findhelp.org is great, except it's overwhelming, right? And you can't tell whether it's regional, national, local. So, I mean, I'm advocating for a clearinghouse of clicking a button, okay, this is Tippecanoe County and this is what we have. Because that would be helpful. But do they have the capacity to do that? What are their expectations of this? So I think we sometimes don't ask that question. We're having this interaction with somebody and we're talking about, I mean, I can go see somebody from a mental health perspective at Gateway and talk about, talk to me about the symptoms you're having of depression. Are you having any suicidal thoughts? What's your anxiety look like? What substances might you be using? That kind of thing. And they'll answer all those questions. But then I go back and I do this in gender health too, because my students always say, wait, wow, you included them in the conversation. Because that's what we don't do enough of, right? Ask them, what do you think? Have you thought about what is best for you? Have you thought about what's available to you? What have you tried before? Sometimes we have folks getting into treatment that is like, okay, no. I mean, there are certain kinds of treatment that they say, that was bad. I don't want to do that. And so we don't help ourselves by not recognizing what those might be for a person and offering them things that they might actually engage in. So what are their expectations of this? Because they could walk into a conversation with you and whatever agency it is and say, in their mind, be going, I've had this conversation 10 times. I expect nothing from this. So asking this first question of what do you expect kind of sets their goals, our goals, and how those blend together. Can they make the change? Do they even think they can? Have they been so beat down that it's like, yeah, I'll come. And maybe it's going to take them a while. I mean, maybe they've been incarcerated 5 times. How many of them are going to actually think that they can make a change when this is just kind of the cycle of what they've gone through? Observed modeling. So do they see anybody in their environment? So I go back to the circle. What does that modeling look like? Do you have folks that are in your circle that say, I want to get there, but as me, not them? So what does that look like for me? Do they have modeling going on? And maybe the program is about that modeling. We think about peers. That is absolute modeling, right? Of where someone can be. The question is, are the peers trying to walk them into their recovery or walk them into their own recovery? And I mean, peers know way better than I do what this whole recovery process looks like. So that's not my question. It's like, is there enough conversation going on so they're walking them to their own recovery? So this is where we get into the social cognitive theory. And then the reinforcement, positive and negative. Are they getting good reinforcement? Like we know in treating substance use disorder, we expect setbacks, right? Things happen. We're human beings. We make mistakes all the freaking time, right? I mean, we do things that are negative for ourselves and negative for other people around us, even if we don't intend to do that. So we kind of expect that. But somebody on this road of recovery may be very disappointed in themselves. I mean, that could be a place where they expect negative reinforcement. And how do we blend in this positive reinforcement of this is what it means to be human? Okay, so this is where we get social cognitive theory. And you can think about this in all kinds of different ways. So your program can have components of these things. Okay. Any questions about these or thoughts about these? Okay. Ding. Okay. This is community. This is the diffusion of innovation. This is the one that I think we could do a lot of this around here because this is how are new, quote unquote, new ideas and social practices spread through a community. So it's really, how do we get the news out and how do we make champions? So is it better than it was before? Right. So that's a question people will ask if they even know about it. Is it better than it was before? Does it fit the audience and is it easy to use? So that's the other thing. When I was on this group writing this program for Logan County in West Virginia, it's the easy to use part because people making change is hard if it requires lots of steps. So when we were thinking about telehealth, are we working with folks who have navigated a computer or an iPad before? And is that easy to use? How do we make that easier? How do we train them in small bites? right? So it's an easy to use. And then we think about early adopters, who is like totally gung ho and on board for what this change is, and how can we use those people to be the champions? How do we bring them in early and say, what do you think about this? You're a person that really, I've noticed that you like innovation, you like new things. What do you think about this? Get their ideas about what would make it easier to use and make them the champion. So those are the early adopters. The middle adopters are like, yeah, let me see how that works for you. Right. I mean, they're not going to wait forever. They may try it when they start to see some kinds of improvements for the other person trying it, like this champion. So they're kind of the middle of the road. Like, let me wait and see what happens. I'm not ready to take that step yet. The late adopters are wait till good evidence. Like, I want to see years that this really works for whatever before I'm going to really get on board for this. And then the never adopters, and we all know a handful of those folks, right? Like, so baked into what they think and believe that there's nothing that's going to shift it. And these folks, you know, we bring them along with us and we say, okay, we're still going to try this. We're going to tell you about this. We know what the response is going to be, but we need to work on the never adopters too, because we don't need to leave them out in the cold. We don't need to change what we're doing because of them, but we can give them information. So this is how you can kind of follow how it gets out into the community, which is why I really like diffusion of innovation when you're bringing new people in. So this is how to choose. We've talked a lot about this. Are you looking at the individual, the group, the community? Then go to the theories of change that have been suggested and pick one that you think fits. The socio-ecological level is where we think about interpersonal or intrapersonal. So the individual, then we go to interpersonal, then we go to community, and then we go to organization. So it's kind of this ball and there are lines, circles in it, and the bigger it gets, you get to the community and the organization. And then at the very top is policy, which we haven't even talked about here because that's huge. Okay, and the last thing, just do you have any questions, thoughts? This is a lot of information. Kind of tried to pare it down into at least small bites so you can think about theories I think would be most helpful.
So I have a question, especially when your organization so like significantly fits into each one of those three. Like, how do you start to process that idea to truly pull out the best decision for one of those?
So the program that you're looking at, the first thing to think about is what I'm trying to put together here, what I want to monitor for, what I want to improve. Is this at the individual level? So am I going to be monitoring people, or am I going to be doing surveys of groups like at a circle? Because then that would be interpersonal, how they socially connect. Or is this a community where I'm going to have, maybe I want to look at diffusion of innovation in terms of getting more people getting medications. So who are those early adopters that can be the champions? And then kind of write your metrics around that. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
It's just what you want to start out focusing on.
Okay.
I mean, it could be individual people. You could look at the trans-theoretical model or health beliefs. Maybe underneath it all, you want to know what is driving individual people. What do they believe they can be successful at? What do they perceive the problem to be? Then that would be intrapersonal, individual in the health belief model. So it's just kind of drilling down to what you want to get out of this particular program. Okay, any other thoughts, questions? And I'm happy to help. I mean, if you want to send an email to the TROS, oops.
You took it off of there.
I did not.
That's okay.
I didn't. It disappeared.
It just disappeared.
Yeah. Send me a message. I mean, just send a message to the email and we can grab it and take a look at it and try and answer your questions. And I'm happy to brainstorm with you too, if you want to do that. Okay. So this is what we're going to look at. And again, as I say, if you are looking at a program that is more community or interpersonal and you're using intrapersonal theory, that's what we want to look at. So choose the theory that fits what your metrics are and who you're trying to impact. Okay. The theory itself, so as long as, is it plausible, is it feasible, is it testable, really goes to that idea. I don't think we're gonna get in and say, okay, they should have chosen trans theoretical, but they used health belief model. Now, my professors in my PhD program have done that very thing, like, what the hell's wrong with you? But what we're gonna look at here is, are you looking at the right level of the socio-ecological model in terms of this theory of change, okay? Based on what your metrics are. So if you're counting people, and you're thinking about individual beliefs, you want that intrapersonal model. If you're counting people in terms of coming to the circle and who those early adopters are impacting, that's your metric that you're going to use. You have more people coming into the circle. That is community level diffusion of innovation. Okay, so it's really kind of how you think about how you're going to gather your metrics. We're not looking for perfection. I don't think this is, so is it plausible, feasible, testable? We may look at a grant and say, okay, I like this idea. And I think this theory of change is just not in the right level. So I'm going to send it back and say, maybe we have a presentation and we provide feedback and say, change the level and think about this theory of change instead. Okay, so this isn't, I don't think this is going to be attempts are great. That's what we're looking for, right? We're not looking for everybody to know exactly what all this stuff is. And I'm saying that, but that's kind of, as the chair, that's my goal. Sharon, hopefully she's nodding. Because this is new. I don't know that we've had a grant application cycle where we've asked for a theory of change before. So this is all new. And so we just expect people to kind of go along this journey with us and try. Okay. Yeah.
So when it comes to answering the part of this in the RFP, you also want us to talk about how we're going to, when we implement things like bridging gaps, how it involves, like depending on what model we discuss, how we're going to enhance, how this project will enhance community engagement and support. I'm just reading what I already wrote. Support system navigation and promoting healthy environments. You want us to really, like, this is the model and here's how we're implementing it and here's how we can evaluate, but as clearly and concisely as we possibly can. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and how that theory of change will help you do that. So maybe it's like, this is the diffusion of innovation is going to help us identify early adopters that can be champions for this thing, or the health belief model. We're going to develop a survey that asks a person, various questions around what motivates them and what, who their kind of barriers are and what they perceive as that kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay. And then the short-term goals are life of the grant. Midterm and long-term goals would be helpful to throw a couple out there, say sustainability wise. Will also, as I said, help you with the next grant cycle. And then the reason for acting and providing a framework for doing so. So the reason for acting is kind of why you chose that one. So a statement that says we chose this model because we hope to do this. It's not a big flowery thing. We just chose this model for this reason. Okay. Does all this make sense? Okay. Then as I said, shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. My ding.
So we're gonna take a 5-minute break. You can go to the restroom. There are bottles of water back here and snacks if you're about ready to pass out. I don't want you to do that. And when we come back, we're gonna do budgets, real briefly. You're still recording, right, Div?
Yeah.
Okay. So 5 minutes, it's all you get. The restrooms are down the hall. There's a whole bunch of them, so you can't miss it. If you've got other questions, everybody has the email memorized, right? TROSCC@tippecanoe.in.gov. And that will get to the three of us and somebody will answer you.
Amy has questions.
Especially, is she able to hear okay? If you have.
Yeah, I asked her that.
Okay. And she was okay?
Carol?
Did I leave anything out?
No. You covered it very well. Oops. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that existed until theories can change. Like,
Yeah, that makes it help promotion program. Like, Did Amy says she made some chat comments.
I have to have Diff look at those because I'll have to have him look at them.
Oh, she said she tried to talk a few times, but she thought it was muted.
Okay.
So you can't see the questions? Maybe I can log in.
It could be, because, I mean, he started it, and I was gonna ask him to see if there was any chat questions. I just didn't get over that. You warm up yet?
I'm freezing. It got worse when I went to the bathroom for some reason.
I have to put my jacket back on.
Yeah.
I think it might have been warmer downstairs because I went down there first. And Stacy's
Oh.
like, you moved.
Okay.
I was like, yes. And I'm like, dang it.
It's colder up here.
Oh. From the DOC perspective. Amy Brinkley's on the teams. So she said,
Where she was at.
yeah. Hopefully taking care of herself and drinking lots of fluids. And she can hear me right now, so she knows that I think that. Okay. Indiana, so DOC in Indiana has data that says educational workforce are the top 2 predictors for recidivism. So
So, lots of bargains.
DOC
Mhm.
has data in Indiana that says educational workforce are top 2 predictors for recidivism. So. And I don't know, Amy, what you're talking about for peer support.
See if can she try to talk now?
You want to try and talk now, Amy?
Can you hear me?
Is she muted or unmuted or?
I'm
Oh, no, I
unmuted.
can't tell. She didn't put her questions in the chat, so she's trying to talk.
Oh, that's Carol talking.
Oh my God. So can I unmute her? Hey, Diff.
I'm unmuted.
Well,
Can you look at,
I don't have
Amy's
her muted.
chat? And
She's-
can you see if you can?
She says
unmute
she's
Amy?
trying, she's unmuted. Do we not have ours unmuted so
Down the
people,
hallway to the left, there's Sharon.
so we can hear people?
I'm in. Asking tough questions. That was our feedback.
Amy, can you?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yay!
I like it better the other way. That's Amy O'Shea, right?
No.
Brinkley.
Oh, sorry, Amy. I thought you were Amy O'Shea.
It's okay. My voice does sound a little different because I'm sick. It's okay, Jason. No, so when I made that comment, excuse me, about it fitting the peer support to a T, it was during one of the theories of change that you were talking about, Carol. I forget exactly which one, but then you brought it back to peer support too.
Okay.
And then the resistant to change, when you were talking about that, I said that's the epitome of Indiana. We'll wait and see what everybody else does and how it works for them first.
Oh, yeah. So they might be the mid adopters, maybe? Or the never adopters? Yep. Okay, well, Amy, we can catch up. I'm gonna mute myself so I don't echo. We can catch up later. Just give me a call when you feel better and we can talk through some of the stuff if you want.
Okay, so
Pleasure.
just check the chats every once in a while in case Amy has a question and we can pull her up. That was okay. So I think everybody's back in here. This sample Excel spreadsheet is one of the links that you have in the application. There's 2 tabs at the bottom. I'm hoping everybody is an Excel expert like I am. And you see that there's 2 tabs at the bottom. So the one tab is a sample. And the only thing I didn't put on this slide is that the other category down at the bottom is your capital. And the capital can only be 50% of your budget. So if you've got a $200,000 budget, you can ask for $100,000 in your capital. So that's just, I'm putting that out there as an example. So basically what you want to do then is, those are your categories on the bottom. Is your item's going to be one of those categories. It's that top line there, the gray line at the top. Obviously, this is what you're gonna follow down. And this is what you're gonna put your descriptions in, and that space should expand as you type in there. And if not, because that's the key, is when we look at the review, we wanna make sure we get all of your documentation in that description of what that budget narrative is. So, that's how you're gonna put it. And this is key for us to know, if you have other funding for this source, please put in there what that other funding is. If it's it's your general funding, that's where it's gonna come from. If it's another grant that you're gonna ask for it. I put in here, this was obviously a DFC. They use the same program, the same format, and so I forgot to change it. This is supposed to be TROSCC. So this was going to be the final documentation of how much we were asking for. So that way, the grant review committee can look at your whole budget, because we realize that there's more than just what you're asking for us, but we want to see that you've got that funding, so we can see that you've got the sustainability out there. Does that make any sense? That's pretty clear. So if you have, in the supplies, I would try to go ahead and categorize everything together. But if you do have something, when you go down here to the bottom, supplies or anything under $500 that you need to run the program. Personnel, I don't think we really said, we like to see that at 50% as well too. We don't want to pay for all $65,000 to that person. We'd like to see it 50% or less. It's possible that you need the whole amount, and just put that in the budget. If it's a new position in your agency and you have to have that position, just put that in the budget narrative, and then the grant review committee will be able to say, well, okay, we'll give you 75%, and maybe you go after Drug-Free Coalition for the other 25%.
Can I add something there?
Yes.
So then your metrics, your SMART goals need to include that person. So
Right.
metrics around what that person is doing.
Right, because, it's a new program and you do need somebody new. We totally understand that, but we need you to justify it. Okay?
That's
And-
what I was getting ready to ask. So it really is like a match grant in a sense.
In a sense,
Because like I've already shut down because they cut my budget already. And I don't know where I'm gonna get that money from. So, I don't know that this is gonna be feasible for us.
well, put that in there. And that's going to be up to the grant committee to review and score it that way. But then when you come back to the interview, we will still have the option, because like I said, we got $1 million to spend. We want to get it out the door, because you guys are the ones doing the work. We're not. County doesn't need that money sitting in their bank account. It needs to be out in the agencies. I'm sorry. I work with the commissioners. I tell you like I said. So, like I said, if it's supplies and you've got 2 or 3 different supplies in there, just put that in there. If it's equipment, the trick on the equipment is that down here at the bottom, you can see the description is that it costs over $500 and it has a life expectancy of 3 to 5 years. So that's where you can decide whether it's going to be equipment or supplies. If it's equipment, I need to see at least two quotes. And you can attach that in the bottom. After your budget, there's an attachment where you can just screenshot the Amazon that this is going to cost you how much, X number of dollars. Okay. We're not saying that that's where you're going to buy it from, because hopefully you're going to use your money wisely and find it somewhere cheaper. The neighborhood, Walmart might donate $200 of it towards it. Anyway, that's what we want to see. Contracts include anything from your space that you rent, from hiring somebody to come in to explain the program to whoever you're training on this. Contract is anything of professional services. So are there any questions about the budget?
Amy had a question. Are
Yes.
you anticipating the entire amount, like the entire 1 million will be allocated?
No, to one person?
No,
Oh.
allocated to agencies. So just all the money could be allocated.
It could be, yes. And we're still sitting on some of the match funds from the DMHA that we had, because that funding still runs till the end of June of 25. This grant cycle goes through March of 26. So we still have a window in there that we can still pull money from that match.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and Amy, I think we need to get it out there. So that's kind of
Oh,
our
yeah,
goal,
exactly.
is not to sit on any if we have appropriate programs to fund.
right, especially if they have the evidence. Yes, Jason.
So just to slightly explain this question, like Phoenix Paramedic Solutions is a for-profit entity. So historically, we've partnered with nonprofits as our fiscal agent, but we now have a nonprofit arm as well. Really, this is ideal for Phoenix Paramedic Solutions. Can a for-profit apply for this, or do you have to be a nonprofit organization?
We've had that discussion and we haven't really come up with an answer. So all I say is put your application in and we'll make that decision. I
It would
don't,
be good to have a backup fiscal agent.
sure,
Should you
sure. But
decide?
that backup fiscal agent is gonna have a general fund for you to pull from. To say that $95,000 for you need for that person, you know, more than 50% is gonna come from that general fund.
But couldn't their nonprofit arm be the fiscal agent?
They could. It does, I don't think that,
Valley Oaks always has been, and had a lot more weight and probably more to bring to the table.
But I don't, our grant committee's not gonna look at that.
Okay,
I feel that the people that are on this grant committee, the review committee, they want to look at the program and get it into the community. They're not looking at who's backing you.
okay.
That's not important to us. It's more important to us is that we get the people served. That's our goal.
Okay.
Isn't that right, Carol?
Yep.
Absolutely. So, and the rest of these slides are going to go really fast because I don't like to talk. And so.
And that dig was at me, because I do. I've been teaching for, I've been teaching for 28 years. I can't help it.
So has anybody gone to the website to try to pull up the application?
Yes.
Raise your hand if you have. Okay, I didn't know if I needed to show you how to do that, if that was really hard. You're gonna go to the, our Tippecanoe County website and it will pull up, did I have one of those? If you go, you'll see that cute little logo everywhere, right? So you'll see this logo on our, we have a scrolling news flash type screen. And you click on that. It talks about these workshops and then you'll click on this to get to the application. It's gonna ask you to sign in. You have to create a sign in. And that doesn't do anything. I mean, I know there's another sign in and a password you gotta do, but that's the way it is. But that's how you get into our Tippecanoe County website. And then that'll create a personnel for you and then this application will come up. Okay, on that handout that we sent to you that has the summary of everything, all those questions are on there. It's in a Word document, wasn't it? We sent it to them in a Word document. So I suggest that you take that Word document, start answering all the questions. You can save this and go back in and work on it. But it's easier if you take that Word document, answer all the questions, copy and paste, and then you can do it in one setting. And I think at the end of it, I'm not sure about because I've not personally gone in there, as I think that you can save it as a PDF before you submit it, so you can review it and make sure that you've answered all the questions and got the spell check correctly and do all that fun stuff. If not, when you finish and hit submit, I know that you get an email and then TROSCC gets an email too saying that it's been submitted and we also get a PDF. So if you have another question and say, hey, I need to really tweak that, as long as it's before midnight on Sunday, the 8th, we can send it back to you or whatever. So that weekend, obviously, I'll be taking my computer home and answering all your guys' questions. So it's really pretty easy. So you create the login, a Word document to complete the questions, copy and paste your answers. Any questions about that?
Is the budget?
It's a link.
Yeah. Is that in
This application,
this,
yes.
or do we upload it
It-
as a PDF?
It's a link on this down at the bottom. You
Okay.
click on it there and then you have to attach it.
Okay.
It'll ask you to attach it.
Is everything that you've talked about due on the,
September 8th.
okay,
Yeah, you got
I was hoping you were gonna say that.
it. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the reason why was because we
Oh,
want to hand the money out by October 1st. And so, and that's why it was a quick turnaround. I apologize, but like I said, we're willing to work with you. So, the deadline's the 8th. If you score through with the 20th is when the committee's going to review everything. We're gonna score it and let you know on the 20th, well, maybe the 21st or whatever that day, the next day is, let you know if you're going to be interviewed on the 26th. And then on the 26th, it depending if how much room we need, we'll probably meet in this room with you one-on-one. We'll have, the same kind of access if you need this, present us with a PowerPoint, handouts, whatever you want to do. And you'll be interviewed by the scoring committee. And then we'll know by October 1st because we'll announce it at the October 7th meeting. So by October 1st, we have everything figured out. Is this my next line? Yeah, well,
Could be worse, man. There's another one of these workshops next Friday.
Correct.
You're gonna be sitting in that one.
next Thursday. Next Thursday. It starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, not 9 o'clock, but
No, I feel like this is a really short amount of time.
It was.
For a, grad school paper.
Actually, they made this process fairly easy
Yeah.
compared to like a state grant. that's-
Right.
Agreed.
And once you get into the application, if you haven't yet, they're all pretty basic questions besides those couple, but really like once you know what it is.
And the questions that I provided for each of the sections are the scoring. I just wanted you to know what the scoring committee was going to be scoring.
right.
So that's what you see on the slides for those sections.
So once we get our scoring rubric, our matrix done too, we're still tweaking it. We will send that out to you and say, so you know. Because I know when you do a federal grant, you usually get some kind of scoring, so you know what's weighted the most, right? Yes,
I was just gonna say, so you do have the opportunity in the presentation part to make a case and to add any information that didn't get into the grant. So it's not, you don't have to take the presentation and just regurgitate the grant application. I mean, we want to understand the program and who it's gonna impact and who you're kind of looking at. And why you kind of chose the evidence-based, how it kind of all ties in. But it is the opportunity to talk like kind of one-on-one with the scoring team about why this is important. And we are all, this is our community. So it's not like you're coming in like being graded on a law oral exam kind of thing. It's a conversation and maybe we offer some tweaks to say, yeah, we really like this. The budget's fine. Maybe think about tweaking the program in this way and you have the opportunity to do this.
so I think that's our goal is that after the committee meets and has scored everybody, is that those that we invite back for interviews will have a little tips on what we would like you to concentrate on. So that way you're not coming into it having to explain the whole thing. We can fine tune it and say, this is what we need clarified. Yes, expand more on your budget. Why did you want to spend this much in supplies? I'd rather see, more of it in your personnel or whatever. So we'll try to give you those types of tips. If you just get an invitation, then you're just gonna have to explain it all. Just teasing. But yes, it is a quick turnaround, Keena. I'm sorry that it's that quick of a turnaround. We were hoping everybody had a program in mind. They just want to get it funded. But adding those special things are gonna be part of the, what's my next, okay. Part of the process in the long run.
Amy had a comment that the application process seems simple, but the largest issue is trying to keep the proposal simple. So again, I would go back and say kind of like what we talked about with the metrics and the SMART goals and how many outcomes. More is not better.
Right.
I mean, the best programs start out as baby steps. And so, being able to show progress in one section or one area of a program and saying, this is our long-term goals or our midterm goals are to expand this into this means the adage, keep it simple, stupid. Well, that was me because I'm not good I try to flowery everything. I'm better about it now. But for yourselves, just think about what is it? What do I want to? I can do one thing. Like I can do this thing. And that's what I'm going to write for. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just giving you guys a hard time.
Oh, good. I
No,
feel better then.
well,
But I want to make sure that if you have more than one program, put in more than one application. But don't combine them into one application, because that's just going to blow our mind. And we're just going to have to say, we're only going to pick one of these and concentrate on that one. Okay, so we want you, if you have more than one program, we want you to make sure you put in another application. And remember that Drug Free Coalition is coming up in October. So they're going to want the same thing. So this is sort of a practice run for you. It's more money. Go ahead.
Amy asked to share again where on the website the Word document is to cut and paste.
We emailed it to you. When you responded that you were coming to this workshop.
Oh, I don't
You-
think Amy did, so.
Yes, she did.
Oh, she did?
Didn't she?
No.
Oh, she didn't. I'm sorry. Okay, well, we
So
will.
Amy, we'll send you the Word document.
I need it too, because I didn't.
Yeah, you didn't respond either. Charlie, you got it, didn't you? You should have gotten it. Didn't you get a response that said you were coming? You're on this list.
I got the response, but I didn't get any additional documentation.
Those are the two documentations you got. You got one that was for the workshop and then one that there was a Word document that talked about the whole one. Right. Who's got one printed out? This one. It looks like this. That's the first page.
It was forwarded to me. I
okay.
emailed
Can
the
we just-
email. and
Can we take the,
get back
do
to
we
me.
have the email addresses of everybody?
Yes, yes, and I can re-email that to you. So this,
Just send it
this
out.
is the page you need, is the second page of that Word document. It's got all your questions there. Okay, and all the links and everything. But now those links that you put in the slideshow, I will make sure that the slideshows get sent to you too. So I will resend the slideshows to everybody that signed in. So if you, we'll put Amy's name on there.
Great.
But if everybody signed in, they will get those slideshows. So Exhibit E, does anybody need the Exhibit E link? Cool. Smart goals and evidence-based program. I think Carol covered that to fine tune. Online application, utilize the helpful links in the format. Your documentation for your budget, it's also in that Word document as well. You can upload it and play with it and make it pretty all the way you want. And remember to submit the quotes if you do have equipment. So are there any other questions?
Is the Exhibit E link in the health department website? Like if I go in there and create an account?
I think it's also on our Tippecanoe County website. And if not, yes, yes.
That's what-
I also put the Next Level website. Was anybody able to pull that up while they were here?
It's in there too.
Okay, yeah, it's everywhere. So,
HSIN.gov/recovery.
so that's the Next Level one. And I'll make sure I add that to your slide, Carol,
Okay.
so that it's on there too. Because I think that there's a lot of information in there that'll help you. And that's really, I think that's all we had. Sharon's been plugged in the whole time too, eh? Charger that's not turned on. This time my battery's telling me it's gonna die. So we finished in less than 3 hours. That's awesome. If anybody has any questions or if they want Carol or Diff or I to help you go through the application process, we can go online and help you understand all of that. If I understand correctly, all I'm going to email is that Word document, the slides.
Don't log out, Amy's typing.
Perfect. Does anybody have any other questions?
Oh, Amy was wondering if the presentations can be offered virtually on the 26th.
Yes, sure. The 26th.
Yeah, when the interviews.
Oh, yes. Yes, we did do that last time. We would prefer that it be in okay, yes, for the interviews. And we will have another one of these workshops if you want to come next week. It'll be Thursday in the same room, 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock. Just because we thought maybe somebody could get it to 9. I know. Means I gotta be standing at the door with somebody to help me open it. We're not open till 8 anyway.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I do my best work under pressure,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I know. That's what I figured.
Like, know the stuff though, even if you do wait till the last minute, you know? So the pressure feels like just pressure, not death.
Right. And that's the thing is this is not a graduate paper that you're writing. It's an application. And we want you to see what you've got out
Did I
there.
not explain it well?
You explained it awesome.
You just scared us. is what you
I
did.
actually wish I had you as a.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, you just explained like,
Yeah.
It was like
3 years. Yeah, into one. That was amazing.
You're already my favorite teacher and I
Yeah.
can't explain it.
Did really good job. I was like, man, you saved so much time.
I know. That was good. It was helpful.
Yeah, the last grant I applied for
your group's gonna work with your group really well together, we might suggest that.
Yeah.
And say, hey, why don't you get with Lindsay and try to make things work out? So,
A lot of cross pollination.
Exactly. Exactly.
The people connections are often more important than the organization.
That's exactly
Well, the
right.
thing is, too, like, you guys don't have a program, but someone is executing that program. Like, how do we cross the bridge so that more money isn't being spent on the same thing, but we're utilizing
Sure.
what's already here in a way that makes sense?
And maybe you need somebody in the jail to help, like the personnel issue, like you need somebody in the jail fully dedicated to making that connection. So that grant, you would write yours around that person. And then the community organization that's the partnership gets funding to provide that program into,
Sure,
in coordination with the person that you're hiring to do that work.
sure. Makes sense. This got dropped on me on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I knew it did.
I think the other thing is,
That's why I'm just kind of blown away. Like, I'm already thinking like my schedule next week. When am I gonna do this? I have no idea.
Guess what you're doing on the holiday?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think we're all
Like I'm
happy.
working Monday.
We're all happy to help
Yes.
wordsmith
Yes.
and get, put this, help you do those kinds of things.
Right.
I think the other thing is there competition? Yes, but we also will be looking at all of the grant applications. And if we get 13 great grant applications, maybe we're trying to shift around how do we fund all of these things in a way that benefits everybody? And so maybe people don't get entirely what they ask for, but we kind of shift it around.
Right.
And think about
Right.
kind of the greater good. We'd rather see
I'm all
everybody
about
do the
working
work.
together, so if we can, like, even if it's maybe you write for one thing and we share that, and then I write for the other thing that we both want, and then we figure out how to join.
That's what the state liked about our match grant is that they knew that the partnership we had in Tippecanoe County is that everybody worked together so well. So they were glad to see that. Of course, they came back and said, we don't know what you're doing, but that's why we have to have those monthly reports. Oh, and that reminds me, I should explain monthly reports. So yes, there'll be a form for you to fill out. Lindsay's probably the only one in here that's been filling those out monthly. And the way that works is how you get paid. That's a key thing, is that you will get reimbursed. So whatever you ask for, there's an Excel spreadsheet for personnel, and there'll be an Excel spreadsheet for supplies and equipment and stuff that you will fill out monthly. You get those turned in the first week of the month. So, like right now, we're getting ready to work on August's expenses. So they have to have that to the county by the first week of that month, the next month. So you've got to be ready, because then you will get paid the third Monday of that following month. So you're going to be in the red for however long it takes, just because that's the way government works.
Yeah.
So the sooner you get your invoices into us, that means that you'll be able to get reimbursed that month. So the checks, we would like to set those people that do get funded up as an ACH instead of an actual check, because it's a lot quicker. You would receive an email on the Friday before the Monday you get paid that says your money's going into your bank account and it's this number of dollars, as long as you've documented it with the personnel and the supplies that you'd asked to get reimbursed for. And then, and you sent this monthly report. If you don't send that monthly report, I'm not going to process your payment. Because I have to send those monthly reports to the state. And the state's not going to reimburse me if I don't send the monthly reports. So it's a trickle down type thing. Plus, we want to keep an eye on what you're doing. And if you have a problem that says you need to change your scope of work, so we can address it right then. I think that I'm going to put in, and you will have a grant contract that you will need to sign before that October 7th commissioners meeting. So hopefully we'll get it to you by the October 1st. We'll have them already filled out. It'll show the budget and how it's broken down on how you can spend the money. And that way you guys will sign it. We'll have a little presentation at the commissioners meeting, and then the commissioners will sign off, and you will be able to backdate your invoices to the October 1st, okay? To be reimbursed. Does that make sense?
Amy had a comment.
Okay.
Hang on. I
So-
got mute. Okay.
So I actually,
What's she saying?
I'm, I don't know.
Is there another computer linked to that meeting? Because that's why you're getting.
He's muted.
Are you muted?
Are you? I'm muted. This is
Okay.
not muted. This is not muted.
Can you
Okay,
hear
we
me
try
now?
again.
Still echoing.
No. Amy's typing.
Okay. You do so.
She said, never mind.
So I do apologize for that lack of payment coming back to you, but I did want to be upfront about it, so you knew that that money was gonna time frame there, it hit you. But that's just the way government works. So she's typing.
Well, I just-
No, she said never mind.
For this grant now anyway,
Why?
It's
because I have to ask for permission before I can apply.
No, you're okay. We have a meeting on Tuesday.
I'm not on the agenda.
You're on the grants.
I'm grandfathered in.
It's good to have friends in Iowa.
My grant script can say it. But that happens a lot and the commissioners know that. So if nothing else, on the 16th, we would say,
That is
community
so.
corrections would like to ask information or ask to apply for the grant.
So Amy's question is around the monthly reporting is pretty easy, and I wondered if it was gonna change this go around.
Oh, no, Amy, you're right. Amy does do that. So no, it will
Yeah,
not change.
no, no change. Cool.
Right. I mean, because you've done the Excel spreadsheet for personnel.
Mhm.
They now have an Excel spreadsheet for supplies. So Amy's not seen that one yet, but we're getting ready to send it out to them for September's claims, is that they'll have both of those documentations.
Amy, did you get that?
Maybe. Okay. I think I did say that last time we had 13 applications and 11 got funded, so, but we just didn't use all the money. And with the match that came in too, we didn't use all that money, so we're gonna try to use all the money. So it's a little bit over $1 million that we're gonna be trying to spend out. And there's more money coming, but it probably won't be this big next time around.
And that's a yearly thing, correct? Two
Yeah,
big waves.
whenever when we think about it.
Yeah. Well, we'll remind you.
Yes, I know.
And Amy said, that she doesn't think she's met you from the jail. Amy Brinkley.
Pointing to me, I'm like, wait a minute.
So she is executive director of Paul's Plain Ministries, and they focus on reentry and substance use disorder, so.
You guys might want to get together and talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, I think everybody's gonna be on the email for this information. right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll see her, you'll see Amy
Email.
Brinkley on the email. So her proposal for this, I think is gonna be called the First Day Out program for this, for reentry, so.
The, I don't know if I'm giving away the secret information. The sheriff, on Tuesday, I'm attending because he's looked at this integrated reentry and correctional support, IRACS is what this program is.
Right.
Is that we're looking at, but like I said, it was told to me Tuesday, and I don't have a lot of information yet,
Okay.
so.
Well, you definitely want to connect with her because she's IRACS too.
Great,
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
What's your email address? I'll just put it in the chat.
DJ Miller
BJMILLER.
@tippecanoe.in.gov. Oh, thank you.
Remind me name again.
Donnie, or Donald,
We want her to call you in.
doesn't matter either way.
And if you call this number, this goes to the commissioner's front desk and they'll connect you to me if you call. But if you email that, it goes to all three of us. And, you know, if Carol sees that you need her help, she'll jump on. So, we good? Okay, again, thanks for coming. Thanks, Amy, for joining, and hopefully we'll see you all soon.
Okay. I'm gonna let her get the email.
Okay, oh, yeah.
She said she got it.
Okay.
I was such a classic.
And you're.
Yeah, she logged out.
Okay.
Yeah, he, that's
Been well received.
Yeah, I'm interviewing. A week from today, so fingers crossed. We'll
my zoologist.
Yeah.
So you stop recording?